Welcome to Medrash Rabbah on Parshas Vaetchanun. Here we're going to discuss the Medrash towards the beginning of the Parsha, which asks a very simple question. The Medrash discusses how the Pasuk says, Ve'eschana el Hashem ba'isa hi leimer. And Moshe Rabbeinu is just telling the Am Yisrael, this is a continuation to the end of the last week's Parsha after they went through all the wars before entering into Eretz Yisrael. So Moshe Rabbeinu says at that moment, I Vaetchanן el Hashem. In that moment, I was Vaetchanan to Hashem. And the Medrash Rabbah discusses that Vaetchanan is one term for prayer. In other words, Moshe was praying to Hashem at that moment. And the Torah goes on to continue that Moshe was asking to go into Eretz Yisrael. And the Medrash asks a question. There are 10 different terms for praying. Why does it specifically use this term? Okay, what is unique to this specific request that Moshe asked to go into Eretz Yisrael? Why, or why is he specifically using this? Maybe in general, not just in this specific instance. So the Medrash says there are two different explanations to this in this specific Medrash Rabbah we're going to discuss, and they seem to be contradictory or even arguing on each other. The first is the Shitta of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says a very interesting thing. He says that from the fact that Moshe asked from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he davened to him, he prayed to him, we're using the wording Ve'eschanן. What does Ve'eschanän imply? It comes from the word chanan, possibly. Chanan means to give as a favor, for free, as a gift, not as in reward of anything, not as if you owe anything. So says Rabbi Yochanan that the reason why Moshe Rabbeinu used this term, actually, this is a general lesson in general about how to approach prayer to God, how to approach demanding things from God. And he says that the approach is that from here you actually see that no creature, no created being has the ability to demand and say that God owes him anything. There's no cheshbon with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. What's his proof? He says, because Moshe Rabbeinu, he's the Rabbim, the master of all the Nevi'im, the greatest of the great, of that human beings can possibly reach. And even him, he had to use the wording of, which implies he's asking God for a gift, as if God doesn't own. So that's Rabbi Yochanan's take. So Rabbi Yochanan seems to take out of this a general approach and how to approach God in relationship to God. That God doesn't owe us anything, and all we're going to request from him is simply, just be favorable. Just give us as a gift. Comes along Rabbi Levi in the Medrash, and continuous to this. And he says something which seems to be a little differently. He says like this: why did Moshe only use the words tachanunim, implying free gift? He says he actually gives a mashal, there's a phrase which describes what Moshe was doing over here. He says the phrase is as follows. The phrase is that he says a person, I guess this was an old phrase, that a person should be careful with his words, that people shouldn't find the place to catch him in his own words. And he's saying this is precisely what Moshe Rabbeinu was doing to Hashem over here. He says why? He says because if you look back in Sefer of Shmos, he says you look over there, and what do you find in Parsha in Perek Lamed Gimel and Parsha Kisisa after the Egel? Hakadosh Baruch Moshe Rabbeinu was asking from Hakadosh Baruch Hu for mercy on Am Yisrael to destroy them, and in part of Hashem's response to Moshe is the wording the Torah uses is v'chaneisi es asher achoin, and I will do favor to whoever I will do favor. And I will give mercy to that who I'll give mercy to. So the Medrash says that Moshe Rabbeinu saw something, he, so to speak, caught into Kadosh Baruch Hu's words over here, something very interestingly. What was he catching on to? He says, what I understood from Hashem's words, he seems to be splitting up two categories over here. That there are people that are worthy of Hashem's rachmanis, Hashem's mercy, and who are those people? People who actually God sees that there's something that, so to speak, God owes them, and they deserve this. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fitting for mercy. mercy implies that there's reason to have mercy on something. You're deserving of my mercy. He says, but when God says it, that's referring to somebody who, even if, he doesn't deserve anything, God says, I will give it to him for free. So Moshe Rabbeinu was saying, in our parsha, you remember, Kadosh Baruch Hu, you told me that, if someone doesn't deserve it, there's still a second rank. And you told me, and in this parsha, HaKadosh Baruch Hu actually, Moshe describes, Hashem says to Moshe from his quest to go to Yisrael, Rav Lach, this is too much for you to ask, so to speak. So Moshe is saying, hey, you know what? You implied there's a second degree over here. There's the degree that even if I don't necessarily deserve it, or too much to ask, there's always a stage further that you will do kindness, you will do a favor, so to speak, a gift, a free gift to someone, right? Even though he doesn't deserve something. And that's the second degree. So says Rabbi Levi, that's what Moshe Rabbeinu is saying over here. So there seems to be an argument. Rabbi Levi seems to argue on Rabbi Yechanan. Rabbi Yechanan learned out a general from here, that we see that really nobody is deserving of anything. And when you're asking from God, everyone, no matter who they are, is asking as a complete favor, as a gift. But Rabbi Levi seems to learn in the Torah that really there are two degrees over here. There's the degree where you are deserving of Hashem's Rachmanus, whatever that means. And then there's the next degree, which is then you're asking for a favor. Then you're asking for a higher degree when you don't have to offer whatever Rachmanus deserves. So he seems to be splitting this up into two degrees. That really, certain creatures are deserving of certain things. And there's so much, but even though there's just certain degrees, there's how much you could ask for. Moshe, this was too much for Moshe to ask in this degree. And therefore he had to go a step higher. So there seems to be a disagreement over here. What is a disagreement? So if you look, you may be able to connect this to the general, there's a general argument amongst the Mekubalim and the Choikrim, the philosophers, and if you look in the Sfarim, the Kabbalim, for example, in the Sefer Avodas HaKodesh from Meir Ben Gabbai, that he goes there and to bring many, many proofs from Medrashim, including in Medrash Rabbah in many places, various places, to show how really within the words of Chazal there are two opinions as to, so to speak, if God needs us, if God needs something from us. And you could go look in his Sefer and see exactly how he understood what that means, that God needs us or not. But there is such a notion that could even be described or said. He brings proof to that from Divrei Chazal. So this may be one of the Midrashim actually, that this is the argument. That Rabbi Yechanan is of the opinion that ultimately God doesn't owe you anything. He owes you nothing because he needs nothing. And therefore you can never request of him because I did something, you owe me, so to speak. But Rabbi Levi seems to have learned it a little differently. He seems to have learned that there are degrees and places where God does owe you, so to speak. So this could very well be that the argument amongst the Chaykrim, amongst the philosophers, which hold that, God never needs anything from us. And therefore, so to speak, anything you're asking is really going to be like Rabbi Yechanan. It's always be a matnas chinam. But according to the Mekubalim, there are certain cases where you are accomplishing something that God actually needs, so to speak. And this could actually be said in that way, and therefore it could be said that when you're praying from God, you do to some degree in certain cases. We're not going to go into when and where the possibilities are, but that could be the possibilities. So have everyone have a great Shabbos, and let me know what you think about this.